we feel what needed to be felt in the body. And then we are able to rewire the beliefs or those emotions so the protector no longer needs to hold that burden anymore and be triggered by said experience or trigger or imprint anymore. Hey beautiful, welcome to Naturally Empowered Living, your safe space to guiding you on your unapologetic self-awakening journey. This is your weekly sanctuary for waking up from autopilot and transforming the way you approach life through the power of meditation, energetics, and root cause therapy. It is my mission to help you heal unprocessed emotions and release stuck energies by alchemizing your struggle cycles into opportunities for deep self-love, awareness, trust, and connection, to return to your innate essence of being, stepping back into your energy of alignment. Because here, we honor all parts of ourselves, the messy and the magic, the shadows and the light, embodying all parts that make you, you. So if you are ready to get to the root of cultivating real change, get cozy, grab your journal and maybe favorite crystals, and let's discover our power within together. Hello and welcome back to another episode of the Naturally Empowered Living podcast. This is your host, guide, and mentor in all things emotions, energetics, and self-awakening, Jonna Smith. And let's jump in today. We are rolling right along this month with another listener submission, and I am truly loving this time with you this month. I love it. So today's episode, I know, is one that so many of us have probably wondered about at some point in time, at one point or another, right? So the submission from this beautiful listener was, you talk about, and I've heard of, shadow work, protector parts, orphaned parts, identities, repressed, suppressed parts. I have a couple questions. One, what is the difference between these? And two, how do I know if I have them? Beautiful question. And first off, thank you. Thank you for sending this in, because honestly, this is probably something that a lot of people won't ask. They might wonder, they might maybe go down a rabbit hole into, and may never have possible courage to ask or to talk to someone about it and just have it lingering inside, right? So thank you for sending this in. Such a powerful question. And I know that we hear these words floating around in the healing space all the time. Shadow work, parts work, inner child, protector, orphan, suppression, repression. And when we really slow down to actually ask, what does this actually mean? Or maybe what the hell does any of this mean? What does it mean for me in my life? Okay. So that's kind of how I'm viewing this question, because if you are in the healing space, and I'm sure that you are listening to this podcast in the first place, right? But to really slow down and be like, what does this actually mean? Or how does it fit into my life? So let's unpack this, shall we? Let's go. Okay, so I'm going to come at this through both an energetic, root cause therapy, somatic, trauma-informed lens, okay? And gosh, even I'm going to bring in probably that instinctive meditation lens as well, because I remember, I'll never forget the first time I ever heard the saying of honoring all parts of yourself was through my instinctive meditation certification, through that teaching. And I want to preface that knowing so you can now begin to understand how these parts live within you, because they do. How to notice them, and most importantly, how to work with them rather than against them. So let's start by saying we all have parts. I'm not talking about our physiology parts, right? I'm talking about those orphaned parts, those shadow work parts, those protector parts, okay? We're not broken or fragmented or need fixing for having different aspects of ourselves that possibly respond in different ways, or in triggering ways, okay? Or in habitual ways or self-sabotaging ways, okay? We're not broken. We are beautifully layered. And each of these parts at one point in time had a purpose. And the tricky thing is that sometimes those parts or our nervous system responses, they don't always understand that they're not of service anymore, right? They might not serve us anymore. And maybe that survival part that we adapted into, 10 years ago is now serving us in a self-sabotaging type of way. And it's time to process and release and discharge. Because again, let's remind ourselves that our nervous system is wired for that survival. So, of course, at one point in time, these parts served a purpose of survival. However, our nervous system is very black and white, very generalizing, okay? So if it worked for us in the past, if it worked one time, it's gonna be ingrained. And that's the way it's going to be, quote unquote, all of the times moving forward until we bring that awareness, until we bring that compassion, until we bring that space to possibly rewire, okay? Or reparent, or the neuroplasticity piece in, right? So let's bring some light and some compassion to these darker corners of ourself within this episode. Oh, I just love this. I love this talk. Like, this is what I geek out on, because there's so much that I've learned through obviously all of my education and certification and But what stuck with me was what I just said, like within that instinctive certification, that instinctive meditation certification, that was the first time that I really understood honoring all parts of ourselves and how to, because of course we may not be at that point to welcome all parts or love all parts, right? But here, let's open this space to honor all parts of ourselves. So going back to the question that asked, what's the difference between these? The difference between shadow work, protector parts, orphaned parts, identities, repressed parts, suppressed parts. In simple umbrella terminology, in my opinion, all of these words, shadow, orphan, suppressed, they're just different names for a similar core meaning. They are all a part that make you, you. Okay? So when we talk about parts work, we're really talking about different aspects of ourselves, our subconscious, our energetic system, our nervous system that took on roles throughout our lives, usually in responses to experiences that we didn't feel safe, seen, supported, loved, right? So we needed to turn on that survival mode. And some practitioners may solely use the terminology of shadow work, or some may use orphan parts, some may use suppressed parts, right? Like, you get the idea here. And yes, they all have different meanings in different circumstances, let's say, of when or how or, where they were created. However, in my opinion, the core meaning behind these parts is that they were created and took on throughout our lives to help us survive, regardless of a shadow part, an orphaned part, a protector part, suppressed, repressed, all of these things. Core principle here is that they were created through a situation that we did not feel safe, seen, supported, loved, and our nervous system kicked on survival mode, possibly created this part to survive. And in root cause therapy, when I guide someone into this regression, right, into this subconscious piece of ourselves, we often meet these parts, that protector, that inner child, that version of us that made a decision about who we had to be in those moments to survive, to now reparent and rewire those parts, to bring them the safety, the love, the support that they needed in those times when they didn't receive it. We're meeting that need now. That's the beautiful piece of neuroplasticity, right? We could always rewire. We could always rewrite. And it's just so beautiful about this work, is like realizing also and accepting. Awareness is a big piece, but then honoring and accepting that every part of us makes sense. Even those parts that you judge, that you avoid, that you reject within yourself. Okay, you still make sense. And bringing that honoring into the equation helps soften those edges a little bit to now meet what was not met in the past, to bring that safety, that space, that support, that love. Because when we start to understand that our system is always trying to protect us, to keep us survive, even if now in present time, it might be an unhealthy habit or a self-sabotaging cycle or an addictive coping mechanism pattern, insert your thing here. When we understand that those parts are still trying to protect you, it kind of changes the way we relate to ourselves a little bit, right? It allows that softening a little bit. It allows that compassion to come into the game. And I feel that this is almost a missing link sometimes, because We think, oh, when I get triggered or I get angry and I yell, gosh, I got to stop doing that. So what do? We want to suppress that down even farther. I don't want to do that. But when you allow yourself that space to be like, hey, why am I yelling? Or why am I feeling this way, right? When you bring in that compassion piece to meet that need of yourself, it allows yourself to kind of see yourself through that different lens. And it can break that cycle. When so often I feel like we think that by allowing what is to come up, or allowing that anger to come up, that we're going to lash out, right? Or we're going to, be wrong or do something wrong. But again, that's just that conditioning that we've had in the past. When you do this in a safe container, you allow that emotion to come up to now meet it from what wasn't met in the past. And that is what healing is. It's not erasing these parts. It's not fixing these parts of ourselves. It's seeing them for what they are, how they were created, showing compassion to that inner child within yourself that needed to survive by integrating them into your being. So let's break this down and talk about my take, again, my opinion, right, on each of these different parts, even though I do think it's valid to say that you can choose whatever resonates best with you, okay? But let's break down, since the submission asked to break down the differences of these parts. So let's start with the shadow, okay? Let's start with the shadow work, the shadow part. Your shadow is everything about you that you've hidden, that you've denied, that you've disowned, that you've shoved under the rug, that you've avoided, right? Because often, at some point, you did not feel safe to express it. You didn't feel safe to express that part, so it created a shadow because you knew that you weren't seen, you weren't supported, you were told to stop, you were told to sit down, whatever that was. It wasn't safe to express that piece of you. So maybe you learned as a child anger wasn't okay, or crying, being sensitive was a weakness, or that confidence or boldness was labeled as being too much. So you shoved those aside. You hid them. They turned into a shadow piece. You tucked those parts away and they became a part of your shadow. And shadow work isn't about fighting these aspects or like fixing them, right? It's about bringing them into the light, right? Bringing awareness into them with that compassion piece, saying like, hey, I see you. You're a part of me too. You're a part of me that didn't feel safe to express. And meet it with awareness and compassion to then allow it to integrate into who you are. Now, protector parts, these are versions of you that you possibly developed to keep you safe from potential pain, let's say, okay? So they might show up as a perfectionist, as an overachiever, as a controller, a pleaser, an avoider, right? Whatever strategies your system learned to use so you wouldn't have to feel unsafe or rejected or hurt anymore. Okay, this protector part is protecting you from that hurt, from that rejection that you felt in the past. So they often have very strong energies, right? They could feel rigid or loud or defensive, even numbing, okay? Their job is protection. Of course, as all of these parts, they mean well. Maybe they're just not serving you in the present moment. So, for example, in a root cause therapy session, when we meet a protector part, it's usually guarding a younger version of you. That's why I love inner child work, because this younger version of you is being protected by this now protector part. And that younger version of you is what we call the orphaned part. So the orphaned part here is that version of you who felt alone in those moments, who felt scared in those moments, or hurt, or unseen, or unsafe, or threatened, who never got that need met, who never received that resolution, that love, or understanding that they needed in those moments. And these parts carry those wounds, right? Those imprints that we talk a lot about on this show. So the protector's role, perfectionism, for example, has been to keep you from ever needing to feel that orphaned part of you, that pained part of you ever again. So here's the thing though. The pain, those imprints, those energetic imprints, they don't disappear just because we avoid it. I say this all the time. Your subconscious, your body innately wants to heal. So it's going to continue to bring things up. You're going to continue to see these same cycles over and over. You're going to continue to choose the same relationships over and over until you're ready to meet it. Avoiding it continues the cycle because you're not seeing it to heal it. It lives within our bodies, within our energetic fields, creating these patterns and triggers that show up now in our present life because we haven't met them for what they were within our past. So when we do shadow work or root cause therapy or any kind of deep inner healing work, we're essentially saying, hey, it's safe. It's safe now. We create a safe container to allow those parts of ourselves to be met. We're allowing those hidden parts of ourselves to now be met with the love and compassion that you potentially did not have in the past. And in root cause therapy, I talk a lot about the emotion behind the emotion, a lot. That's just another way of saying that protector emotion is protecting that sadness emotion. So that protector emotion may be anger, which is protecting the orphaned emotion of sadness. You see how they kind of all coexist together? And when I say like shadow work, protector parts, orphaned parts, like it's all how your body is wired to survive. They all coexist together. And it gets kind of confusing. I hope that I am explaining this in a way that isn't confusing. Because if you want to put a label or terminology on these parts of ourselves, that's how I would best describe it. And now we have to talk about repressed versus suppressed parts. And they sound very similar, but there's very subtle energetic differences here. So when something is suppressed, a suppressed part, it means that we consciously push it down. Like if you feel tears coming up, but like you swallow them down or take a deep breath because you don't have time for it right now, or you don't want to show those tears in those moments, that is actively suppressing those tears, right? But when something is repressed, it's pushed down deep into the subconscious that you no longer have conscious awareness or access to it. You can. I don't want to say like you don't ever have access to it, but you just currently don't have conscious awareness to it. And that usually happens with traumas or early childhood experiences. They get buried down to protect you. And energetically, suppressed emotions can often be released through solely awareness, and embodiment work in those moments, right? Like moving, breathing, journaling, crying. If you suppressed those tears in that moment, but then you got in your car 10 minutes later and you allowed them to come back, right? You allowed that to process. Okay, so through that awareness, you were able to then, cry it out or whatever you needed for those tears to come. Suppressed parts usually require a little bit of a deeper subconscious process, like root cause therapy, inner child work, another form of somatic therapy, where you can safely access and process that stored energy to then discharge, transmute, release it. And again, every layer of you makes sense. Our system chose suppression or repression as a way to protect you until you now have the tools and support and safety to actively process it. So I hope that gives you a good description of all of those parts, right? And how they can kind of show up in your life, or to put like a terminology on, each one in that question. So now the second part of this listener submission is, how do I know if I have these? And the answer simply is we all do. Let's get specific of how we can start now recognizing how they may show up. You might notice shadow parts when you have strong emotional reactions or judgments towards others. You may feel triggered by someone's confidence, anger, or freedom, qualities that you've maybe suppressed. See how they all coexist? Where you've maybe suppressed or repressed those within yourself. So they're a shadow part within yourself, And then you feel triggered by someone else who has that same part within them, but they're not a shadow part within them. Or maybe you like catch yourself saying like, I don't know why I did that. That's often like a shadow driven behavior, right? A protector part. You might notice if you find yourself overthinking, overworking, overgiving, getting defensive or shutting down when someone maybe gets too close. You control situations to avoid that disappointment from yourself or others. Or you numb out emotionally, choosing that coping mechanism or scrolling or staying busy, avoiding that embodiment, avoiding that stillness of just being. Because it's protecting you from something inside, right? That at one point wasn't safe to express. You might notice orphaned parts now when you feel deep sadnesses, loneliness, rejections that seem too big for the situation, right? Something like making mountains out of molehills, I'll say, because it's being triggered from a past experience. You might also notice orphaned parts when you feel small or powerless when you're triggered. Maybe you don't speak up for yourself, you don't use your voice. You might long for nurturing, but you also might resist receiving it, right? Like that's where the self-sabotaging cycles come in. And if you find yourself saying like, ugh, I hate that part of me, this is a perfect place to pause. That reaction tells you, like saying like, oh, I hate this part of me, or why do I do that? Or, insert your thing here, that inner critic. That pause is a perfect place to allow that part that's trying to be seen to actually give it space. Again, these parts are nothing to try to get rid of. They're invitations for that reconnection. They're invitations for that embodied wholeness of who we are. And if you're sitting here thinking like, okay, Jenna, I get this, but like, what do I do with all of this? Like, how do I, quote unquote, heal these parts, release these parts, repattern these parts? I'll give you step 1, okay? Step 1, awareness, safety, regulation. We can't connect with these deeper parts of ourselves from a dysregulated state. So before we go into exploring these parts, we have to do it safely. We have to do it from a regulated state. That awareness is I feel like we're all kind of right there. If you're listening to this episode right now, you have that awareness. You're here, you're ready. So now let's bring in that safety and that regulation. You can ground your energy, do grounding exercises, feel your feet on the floor, breathe into your belly, really embody that breath. You can remind your body, say it out loud or hum it to yourself like, I am safe. And simply bring curiosity, not force. I know this is it's not tangible. This work is not very tangible. But I do feel that discernment of force versus simply bringing curiosity. We're not looking for any specific outcomes. We're not looking for any specific expectations to be met. That's force, right? We're bringing that curiosity and allowing and trusting what is meant to be will come up. So you might begin by noticing, like, if a part is even active, if that anger is coming up, if that protector part, you want to be that overachiever, or you have to go, do. Rather than judging yourself once again or saying, gosh, I hate this part of me, or why do I have to be this way? You can say, I notice my perfectionist, that protector part showing up right now. That is so interesting. Wow. Or I can feel that younger part inside who's afraid of being rejected. And you might, think back to on the playground, or maybe a memory might pop up. And you can now create that space to listen. Maybe you can place a hand on your heart, one on your belly, or both hands on your heart. And just allow yourself to listen. Like, what is this part trying to do for me? What am I afraid of? Or what would happen if I did this instead? Or if I chose this? Or what if I paused this next time? Like, that's how you start building a new relationship. Okay, so yes, it's neuroplasticity, but we also call this spiritual reparenting. You are actively rewiring your nervous system from a present, embodied, regulated state. And from an energetic lens, this is like coherence. We are bringing all parts of you back into alignment with your present day self. I just had a moment with my son last night. Oh my gosh, 6, he'll be 7 in a couple months. But he went through the whole cycle of what I do with clients in root cause therapy. He was angry at me because I said no to something, and he was angry. He was frustrated. He chose to grab his journal and start drawing, and he was like rage, scribbling, right? And he, lashed out and he said, you said no to me about this. I'm going to say no to you. Like, you can't exercise for the next week or whatever. Like I'm not laughing at him. He said something along those lines. Like he was in it. He was angry. Right. And I was right there. I was holding space, letting him go through it. I'm not here to like fight with that prefrontal cortex right now. I'm letting him safely express. Okay. And then in the next few minutes, he was done writing. He starts sobbing. He's like, oh my gosh, now I'm sad. Like, now I'm sad. He was so angry and then he was sad. That sadness was the emotion behind the emotion. His anger was the protector part. That sadness was what was really underneath. He was sad he didn't get XYZ, whatever that was. And then he's sad and now he's crying. And he's just like, oh my, like these emotions feel so big. And I'm like, you are doing this. I'm right here with you. Like, you feel through this. He's breathing, like all the things. And within a couple minutes, he had like this clarity. He goes, Mom, I don't want you to not work out. He was so cute, like exercise of all things, right? But he's like, you can work out. I shouldn't have said that. I'm sorry. And I just start sobbing because I'm like, oh, like Jace, this takes people their whole lives to understand the process and the flow of emotions. I said, what you just told me, that was your soul. That was you speaking. A couple minutes ago, that was your anger speaking, and you are not your anger. And once you bring that awareness into the equation, you're able to meet that anger where it's at, but then we're not projecting out. Of course, we're not perfect. And him and I talked a lot about the respect and the projection of all the things, but we don't do it in the heat of the moment, right? What does that help you in the heat of the moment? And it was just such a beautiful evolution. I was crying. This is at bedtime too, mind you. So he's like, why are you crying? I said, because this takes people their whole adult lives to understand the process of a nervous system response, but come back to regulation. Oh gosh, I was just so proud of that tiny little body, 6-year-old body. My gosh. But like, that is what I do in root cause therapy. That is what I help adults with now because they didn't have it then, right? We often walk through these processes where we might meet that orphaned part or that protector part or that traumatic imprint, right? That's repressed part. And we feel what needed to be felt in the body. And then we are able to rewire the beliefs or those emotions so the protector no longer needs to hold that burden anymore and be triggered by said experience or trigger or imprint anymore. And we can begin this right now through awareness, through compassion, through body connection. And when we meet these parts with love rather than fear, when we meet them with connection rather than avoidance or distance, they feel safe to come up and they can integrate back into wholeness. And something else to note too, since I kind of took a tangent and brought up root cause therapy a little bit within my practice, but I really take a past, present, and future approach with your healing, with your embodied journey. I just said, like, we bring all parts of you back into alignment with your present day self because it's so important to meet those past or buried or shadowed or repressed orphaned parts of you. It's so important to meet them where they are and what they need and give them that love and connection. So the approach that I follow, being that past, present, future approach, is we work with your full timeline here. We heal what was that past, supporting what is the present. Like, how do we want to feel now? Or what triggers do we want to really calm or regulate or meet from a place of presence or connection or peace, right? And then aligning with what's next, that future peace. And if we get started on a journey together, working together, I seldom suggest starting with Reiki alone. I will never turn anyone away from receiving Reiki or energy healing, but the depth of the work is also in the somatic processing of what was. Okay, those imprints, those traumatic, energetic, compounded emotions, and that is within the somatic practice of root cause therapy. Root cause therapy is that past. Reiki is more so that present life attunement in the now, and future can be a combination of that maintenance, if you will. And I also offer future root cause therapy and life between life sessions, which I never really talk about it because there's really, like, this is after that foundational healing work, okay? So that was a tangent, like I said. So let's recap. Shadow parts are disowned aspects that we've hidden, buried down so deep. Protector parts are ones keeping us safe from pain or hurt, unmet needs. Orphaned parts carry those original wounds, call it those imprints that begin with. Repressed and suppressed parts are simply the energy that we've pushed away, either consciously suppressed or unconsciously repressed. And they are all parts of you. They all make sense. They're all here for a reason. And the invitation is not to fix or get rid of them. It's to remember them, to honor their place, to bring compassion into why they are there in the first place, and to discern if you're ready to reparent and embody them as whole. Because every time that you reclaim a piece of yourself, that you reconnect with a piece of yourself, you return to more of your inner harmony, your wholeness, your truth, your authenticity, your energy of alignment to your soul. And I know I've said this a few times already, and I've been saying this a lot. Credit goes to Sarah B. Sarah B. Coaching, I think, is her handle on Instagram. But I think her tagline is "You make sense." And it's just, it is so deep. I just love that saying because you do. You make sense. Every part of you makes sense. And I'm so thankful for the work that she is also doing here in this lifetime. Oh my gosh. She's definitely a mentor, a role model of mine. So thank you so much for tuning in to today's episode, and to the listener who submitted this beautiful, powerful, deep, deep question. If this conversation resonated within you, maybe you could take some time today to journal, to take a fiver, to reflect on what parts of you that may be asking for attention. You could ask yourself or write down, journal on, what part of me has been protecting me the longest? What parts of me feel unseen? What parts of me are ready to be seen? And just see what comes up without judgment. Like, healing isn't about becoming someone new. Healing is about embodying all parts of you and connecting to all of you that you already are. Bringing love to the places that felt that they had to hide or that they weren't safe. I am sending you all so much love and gratitude for being here today, for doing this work, for allowing me to walk beside you on this journey. Thank you. And until next week, as always, simply be you. You have everything inside of you to learn your energy of alignment and be unapologetic in who you are. I'm sending my love and so much light.
Did you find this episode free or empowering? Please read my review. Tickle, boop.
Thank you for spending this sacred time with me on Naturally Empowered Living. If this episode brought you closer to stepping into your energy of alignment, I'd love for you to leave a written review and share how this show has supported your journey. Your feedback truly lights me up and helps others find the space of transformation. And sharing it with someone who might need it spreads the ripple of healing even further. Be sure to check the show notes for ways to connect with me and explore personalized healing sessions and mentorships to deepen your self-awakening journey. Thank you. I appreciate all you are and all you do.